Calling the Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee to order. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes? Member Allison, is there a second? Member Dunn. All right, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from the July 28th meeting? All right, seeing none, please vote. I'm going to vote aye until my computer wakes up again. Motion is carried. Now we're on to informational items, and I'd like to come forward. First, I need to say that, unfortunately, we aren't going to have the external auditor's report because there is an illness with the family of the person who is coming to present it. Please try to restrain your sadness. You can access that audit report, and Julie's going to tell you exactly where to find it.
Yes, for the county board members, it should be on your iPad, all of those documents. And for the public, you can go to the peoria.county.gov. Is this working? Okay. I think everything went out. Do you want me to keep going? Yeah, okay. peoria.county.gov, right? And then under departments, you can go to finance department, and we have an annual financial report tab, and you can find the 2025 report and all the previous reports on our website. In your packet, we have June 30th, which is our fiscal year, ends in December, so we are halfway through the year. For all funds combined, we are at 48.7% of revenues and 38.2% of expenditures. For general fund, we're at 50.6% of revenues and expenditures are at 42.6%. Looking from what has changed from May, there hasn't been many significant changes. We're still on track for revenues, for the state shared revenues. Property taxes are reflected in this report, so you should see that. The only two funds that are reported as being not within fund balance policy is the Wind Energy Fund, which that finance policy is soon to be approved by the board to go to zero. So once that's there, that will fall off. And then the Care and Treatment for Persons of Development Disability Fund, that should be off soon once the property taxes and PBRT continues to come on. But by the end of the year, it should be back on board. That's all I had highlighted to the committee today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I believe that is still is the increased volume that we're getting from online sales. You know, people, I mean, I would say I probably shop more online today than I probably ever go to brick and mortar. So I think that, and now that after the Wayfair case went through a lot of the sales taxes for the county, so the county has the public facility and safety, we now collect that. And so the local use tax has gone down because that is no longer being collected through that. And so I would say the volume of online sales would probably be the largest contributor to that. And then the change of the Wayfair lawsuit that changed it.
Thank you. On to the long-term care services report.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so you have in front of you the Long-Term Care Services Fund report. I do want to highlight we have this month, for the period ending at the end of June, there was a little over $4.6 million in the fund if you're tracking from month to month. That is a significant increase from the prior month, and that is because the first property tax distribution was placed into that fund. So that's the reason for that increase. But that's the only thing I have to point out at this time. If you have any questions, though, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Questions? All right, thank you, Sean. Next, we have accounts payable review.
That report is provided in your packet, as it is every month. If there's any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them for you at this time.
Questions? All right, and the Peoria County capital projects, funding sources, and progress.
Keep all my reports straight, sorry. All right, so this report, the first page shows the current activity through August 13th of this year. Of that, for FY26, we have had about $9.6 million in activity. If there's anything specific about any projects, I can try to answer, and I know Kyle is here as well. We can try to answer those.
Questions? All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Moving on to resolutions, do I have a motion for the revision of the Peoria County financial policies? Member Salter, is there a second? Member Coates. All right. Go ahead.
I'm going to give an overview. Okay. The financial policies obviously are a document that the county board approved initially, and then also any revisions to those financial policies. Heather did a very thorough review over the last few months prior to her leaving, and she did provide, and Scott and I have reviewed a red line version to those financial policies. We did provide that to you last month at the committee meeting, so you had a month to review. I'm just going to highlight very briefly some of the major changes that are in there, and then if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. The intent of these changes are really to reflect current practice as well as best practices, and then also to provide some clear direction to staff as we approve invoices or submit invoices, things like that. So the first major one really specifies that appropriations need to be made mid-year if the revenue source is unanticipated and brought forward mid-year. So a great example of that is Becky in the last committee received a bequest of a little over $13,000. That was revenue that we did not anticipate receiving, and so at that time appropriated the revenue, but then also gave her the spending authority for that, should she need to be able to spend those funds versus just have them in fund balance. So that's going to be something new moving forward, that any unanticipated revenue, we make the appropriation at that time. It also specifies that special revenue funds be utilized prior to using general fund dollars. So special revenue funds typically have a designated purpose for those funds. So a great example is an automation fund. The circuit clerk has an automation fund. It dictates that those dollars in that fund to be used for certain purposes within the circuit clerk's office. So we are, the intent of this policy is to require departments, if you have a need to make to expend some dollars, that you check to see if one of your specialized revenue funds, the intent of that is for that, versus using general fund dollars, and that's a way to continue to protect the general fund and its balance. The third thing I want to point out is that any capital requests, including vehicles, include the total cost of the item. So a great example would be a patrol car. Actually, if I can back up a minute, we have actually started implementing this in practice, even though it wasn't in the policy, through the FY27 budget process. So any departmental requests for vehicles, patrol cars, it's not just the cost of the vehicle, but also the cost of the cages, the radio equipment, those types of things. We're asking that they include the full cost of that item when they make that request. It also includes language for the CWA, or Community Workforce Agreement. That has been put into place, but it was not included in the actual financial policy itself when the board adopted that a year or two ago. And then it also states that long-term personnel projections be provided to the full board, not just county operations, when we bring forward a labor agreement for ratification by the board. So just so you understand the cost for each of those out years of those labor agreements is the intent. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions. I know it's super exciting.
Are there questions, comments? Member Ricker.
Maybe. No, thanks for going through the details on it. There was one item on here that I still have concern about, and that's the Community Workforce Agreement, which was put in place in June of 2025 by this board. And the primary objective at that time was to increase the number of competitive bids that the county would have, so we'd have more bids to choose from. I don't know the data on that result. And I voiced some other concerns in that meeting. Those concerns still stand. So as long as that item is in there, I am not going to vote for this change in policy.
Thank you. Are there other comments? All right, seeing none, please vote. Thank you. Now we'll consider the resolution, general fund vacancy, wage, and benefit.
Okay. This was the other
Oh, wait,
item.
I need a motion.
Oh, that's right.
Member Duncan, Member Blair.
Okay, so this was the second item that was provided to the committee as an informational item last month. Again, I will walk through it, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them at that time. So back in November of '25, we've been working on FY '27 budget, so November of '25, the board made a resolution to go in and take 25 of the vacancies in the general fund and sweep those into a separate line item within the general county budget, the funding for those positions, with the intent being that should those departments need to fill those positions during the course of FY '26, that then the county administrator had the authority to go in, and if it was determined they really did need those funds and did not have enough within their appropriation, that then county admin and the finance team would sweep those funds back into that departmental budget. So as of in January, the transfers were made, and there was funding for 25 positions totaling just over $1.1 million. Since November of '25, 18 of the 25 positions have been filled, and 10 of those 18 have been filled since January of '26. However, there have been none of the original 1.1 million has been swept back into those departmental budgets. Through turnover and additional savings, those departments did have enough room within their current appropriation to be able to fund those vacancies. You will notice on your report, and I'm just going to hold it up and show you, in going through, this was the first month that I actually created this report, and because there has been some turnover within those original vacancies, in order to keep it very clear what positions were filled versus vacant, you'll see there's a new column on the right-hand side that just says filled or vacant. And I'll continue to update that month to month through the end of the year, so that way it's very clear which have been filled. And then we continue to update the dates within that budget, within that chart. So, but the real takeaway is that 18 of the 25 have been filled, 10 of those 18 have been since January, and there have been no funds swept. That original 1.1 is still in the general fund line item. The resolution before you that is tied to that chart, what that does is, back in February, there was some discussion at this committee about what the intent of the resolution was. Was it intended for the county administrator to have the authority to approve those backfills and sweep any of those funds, or sweep any of the funds associated with the backfill, or was that through the corresponding committee that department or office reported to? And so after further conversation, we believe the intent was to actually have the county board committee that department or office corresponds to give the approval to shift any of those funds back into the department's budget. So the resolution that you have before you today, under the now therefore be it resolved, basically does that. It gives the authority to sweep those funds back into the departmental budget to lie within that corresponding county board committee. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Are there questions, comments? Member Phelan?
My only point of clarification, I think you said it, I just want to be sure that I understand, is that if that money was to be swept back to that committee, that is a committee action that is required to do that, correct?
Correct. So the dollars would be, it would say, okay, as a department head, Scott wants to fill a budget or a position. That's a bad example because none of ours are on this list. But if one wants to be filled, then it would come to the county board committee. The county board would say, yes, we approve moving those funds back into the departmental budget. And then it would go to the full county board as a second level of approval. And then after full county board approval, the finance team would go in and move $35,000 or whatever that is for that wage back into, say, the state's attorney's budget, or I think it's state's attorney, sheriff, probation, and courts are the four, or public defender, are the four departments.
A follow-up question then would be, what type of delay does that create in the hiring process, and how does that impact us getting new applicants through the door?
I would say, just speaking purely from an HR process standpoint, it would be about, at maximum, probably a 1-month delay. And it would really center upon the current process is if someone wants to fill a position, then they submit a requisition to HR, and HR says, yes, that position exists, it's funded in the budget, so on and so forth. And then they go in and they can post, and then they send a personnel action form back that says, okay, I want to hire Shauna Musselman at this wage, right? At that point, HR talks to the finance team and says, again, is there funding for this position? And that is when, through that process is when finance and HR identify, yes, it's a position on this list. And so it would really be at that point that then it would say, no, this would need board approval. So 3 weeks, 4 weeks potentially. Most don't have a start date until at least 2 weeks out. So Scott, unless I missed something, but I would say about a month tops.
At the time that we approve the budget, we're approving the funds for those departments to hire staff. I guess I'm trying to understand why it would need to come back to the committee to then authorize those funds to be swept. I thought previously in conversation, the sort of huddle, if you will, between the chair of the committee and the administrator was to ensure what you said very early in the conversation was that if they had the funding in their current appropriation, it could be utilized rather than us being mandated to sweep those funds into a department's budget. Does that make sense?
My understanding was that it wasn't that it would be mandated to the board. It would be the department wants to fill this position that's on this list of 25 in FY26. They don't have any more flexibility within their budget through savings or turnover. They really, finance and HR are saying they need this money, and then it's up to the board to determine if they want to move that money back from that vacancy line in general county back into the departmental budget for that position. Are you talking, let me clarify for just a second, I'm sorry. Are you talking about those for 26 or moving into 27?
Either.
Okay.
It was, I guess it was my impression that the reason that there was any conversation, so we authorized the appropriation of those dollars into the budget, and that was done by county board action.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason that there was a conversation between then and somebody actually hiring was to ensure that if money existed in their current budget, we weren't transferring above and beyond that. So, I think everyone knows this fund was created because departments were misbudgeting. And this was a way for us to capture some of those funds back. It was my original thought that the only reason we were going to have another discussion was to take some of that weight and pressure off the administrator to make that decision. That it was sort of a check and balance to ensure, yep, they've got the money still there, they can pay. It's needed or not needed. So I guess it feels like this action would further complicate the process and potentially chase away applicants that are trying to get through the door and struggling with a 1-month process.
I would say that would, from a timing standpoint, yes. Typically a department would submit and then they may have a start date 2 weeks later, depending on the timing. This may say, no, we need to wait 2 additional weeks beyond that to be able to do that.
Public safety and justice, not even 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we had an attorney that we were going to offer a position to. We made them wait 3 weeks and we lost that applicant. So I'm a little bit concerned that this is maybe overcomplicating the process in a way that is also taking some flexibility away from the administrator and just really making it hard to become an employee at Peoria County.
there we go. Yeah, going to that point, practically, I'll put this to either Shauna or Scott. Does this likely to impact a lot of people? I mean, it takes a while to get something posted and interviewed, et cetera. I mean, they can start as soon as they're ready. That can start going towards the board once you know that they need a person and stuff. Is this practically going to slow it down? Because I agree that if it does, and it's impacting our ability to hire, I want to see if we can simplify the process. If it really does take a month or more from when the department goes, yeah, we need someone before someone actually starts, then I'm comfortable with this. And maybe, I don't know, you guys tell me, from a practical standpoint, is this slowing down the process for you? Unbearably so.
So I would say from January to today, well, even prior to January, anytime a department or office submits a request to fill a position, the HR team and the finance team work together to determine if there's funding available, regardless of whether it's a position on this list or not. So that piece of the process is going to exist no matter what. I think that is the process that has helped us identify for those positions on this list. Do they have the funds available and need the sweep? Up to now, no one has needed to sweep those funds, so there's not been a delay in the process, right? So up until today, that's not been a problem. Could it be a problem? Potentially. I mean, obviously, and not to speak for Sky here, but I mean, it would be a simple email to him to say, hey, funds aren't available. This is their justification. Can we sweep those funds? And then he would give the okay, and then we would do that, and they can move on with the hiring process, potentially within 24 or 48 hours of that request, right? This would then have to make it go through that committee process, to your point, Danny, the committee process and the board process. This was brought forward because we thought that that was the intent. If it's not, and you want to keep it at the administrator level, that's a very simple thing for us to continue to do. It's really just trying to seek clarification from the committee as to what you want that to look like.
Member Ricker.
City Power. I guess I'm going to have to agree. I think where Member Phelan's going with this. Simply, when we approved the budget last November, the board approved those 25 positions. We have budget for them. So the board made that decision. The only change we made was we put an accounting process. We pulled those 25 into a separate fund to be identified and managed. I'm against making this change because it just prohibits and slows down the process. Take, public defender, if they have someone that they go through the process to interview and decide, I want to offer a position to this person, they need to make that decision within days, not wait 3 weeks because that person's long gone. And again, we give the administrator the authority to administer the money as needed. You have a reporting system now where it reports to this committee or whichever committees of how much money's been moved and where and what positions. That's really all we need. And if this committee decides that our intention and what the administrator's doing is out of sync for some reason, we have a discussion, we sync it back up, and we move forward. So I think this is nothing more than administrative paperwork that makes it really difficult. So I will not be supporting this.
Member Phelan.
I just wanted to apologize because I think the last informational item referenced a conversation that I took part of, but it was never my intention to make it come back to the committee. When I discussed a committee conversation, what I really meant by that was coming into this, we knew there was going to be a lot more scrutiny on ensuring that the department requesting funds from the vacancy fund truly needed them. And so it was my intention in the original conversation that was had to sort of behind the scenes have a conversation with the administrator just to make sure that we were all on the same page, and to only do that across the first year or the first couple transactions to ensure that the fund was being managed properly. But I think doing this, if we were to take this action, I think it takes a little bit of latitude away from the administrator, and it delays the process and overcomplicates things. So is this something we can just amend on the floor?
I would prefer if you would go back to the drawing board and let's just hold it and start over again.
So just to clarify, the original resolution that went forward gives the county administrator the authority to make that, to sweep those funds at that time. So unless I'm misunderstanding, I think what the original resolution that's currently in place that we've been operating under since January, I think it's just, we don't implement this additional resolution. I don't think there needs to be a new resolution brought forward unless there's something additional that you want to have occur. Otherwise, we'll just continue the way we've been doing it. We get a position come in, we evaluate to make sure there's funds. If there is, we don't sweep the funds. And if we do need to sweep funds, then Scott has the authority, is how the current resolution reads.
We can always report out to either the oversight committee or operations committee, which functions as your personnel committee, or both, for any of those transactions. And if you wanted, we could come back with a modification to the policy that has that committee, take an affirming vote. I mean, the money for the position is been appropriate, just a function of where the money is. I don't sit in your chairs, but for the life of me, I can't think of a reason why you would not vote to approve moving the money if the money was needed, and we could document that the department could not fund that position with the current appropriation due to vacancy savings throughout the year or whatever the case may be. But again, I don't sit in your chair, so.
Thankfully, our legal advisor has said that we either need to vote it down or send it back to be redone. So, because there is a motion on the floor. So, she's not saying vote against it, she's just saying, yeah, parliamentary.
Table it, withdraw it, or simply vote it down. So if there's no additional motion, then you're just voting on it. Or you can make a motion to table the floor.
Can I make a motion to withdraw it? I think that might make it look better than voting it down.
Yeah.
Does she have to be the one who withdraws it?
Probably, yeah.
And I think I seconded that.
Member Duncan. If, since you made the motion, are you willing to have it withdrawn? Not at this time. Okay. All right, so then, are there other comments that people, Member Roselle?
Yes. Whatever action is taken here today, we'll continue to report out the way we have. Yeah.
All right, Member Duncan. Member Phelan. I did it.
Okay.
I
I didn't know if you could see this far over here. My only other comment is that it seems that the fund was in general may be successful since there is some money left over in that account. I know we looked at everything that had been vacant for a year, but my ask to the administrator and to finance would be looking at maybe 18 months, or I'm sorry, 6 months vacant going into the next budget season to see if there's any more positions that we could potentially put into this.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. As part of the FY27 budget process, we've actually started to do that. And we wanted to, it's good you pointed it out, it's also a consensus of the committee. We've had some internal discussions on how far back to look, because over the course of time, this list will diminish unless we continue to repopulate it with, current positions that have been vacant for a certain amount of time. Whether it be 18 months or 12 months sick from, the start of this budget process or sometimes this budget cycle, is consistent with what we did a year ago. So, but there has been substantial savings, yes.
I'm Member Blair.
I will second that withdrawal. Is that what we determined?
It's actually a request to the chair to withdraw the motion that the chair gets to approve. So you do not need a second or a vote for the discussion wants to withdraw the motion.
And you do. All right. The motion is withdrawn. Unless anyone has more comments. All right. Moving on. We are going to, are there any other comments? Move